Good morning, Roger Penske. Great to see you.
Well, Paul, thank you for having me as part of your show. Obviously, you and I have known each other for many years, and I think you were the one that helped me design the logo for the Speedway business many years ago, correct?
Yes, indeed. And I think we even argued a little bit about that. That was kind of fun.
That was Swish, right? That's right.
You won.
Always
Great to see you,
for me.
Roger. Great to see you. Well, I think first off, I think it was on November 4th last year, you announced that you were acquiring the Indianapolis Motor Speedway, and then on January 6th, that became official, and you took the keys to the place, and it became the Penske Entertainment era after many, many years of it being the Holman George family operating the Speedway, and we're grateful to them for all they've done for the sport, but we're excited about what your team is planning, and I think we'll just start by asking you, how was this first 329 days gone for you? I don't think it's exactly what you expected.
Well, Paul, I think having been there with my dad since '51 and almost every year except when we had the split, with USAC and IRL, et cetera, it's an amazing place. I spent the time inside, not focusing on the outside. So I had the opportunity. Obviously, this transaction came together quickly. We knew the Holman family. They knew us. Mark Miles really did a great job in brokering it for everyone. And certainly when you think the trustees that were involved in making the decision for the family, it was the right one at this point to make that change, really not even knowing what was coming when we look at COVID mid-March. But, quite honestly, I'd do it again. I'd try to get a better deal maybe, but you always want a better deal. I think the great thing is that the history, the iconic nature, of that track is amazing. It's really a generational family that comes to that race. When you think about, we're sitting here today for this year's race and have over 170,000 tickets already sold. Now, obviously, a lot of those are credits from last year, but that's okay. People want to come back. So just shows you the interest. And the governor really is Holcomb, Eric Holcomb, outstanding support. Joe Hogsett, the mayor of Indianapolis. And they took us in as a family, meaning our people, as really real members of the Indiana community and also Indianapolis. And I think that was a great ground to sit on when we came in. But then I decided, what can we do for better fan experience? We knew about the racing. The racing had been good. We could talk about the series later. But so we really looked at this probably as from the standpoint of November until January 9th. So we were kind of practicing of what we wanted to do. And this related to, from my perspective, to a complete reset of the fan experience. And that was my main focus, because not even knowing what was coming 2.5 months later, really, when you think about, the mid-March with COVID, we had to go. And, we set a very, very tough schedule, to go through the entire facility to make it better. And just to mention a few, if you want to know a couple of things that we did get done there, we widened Georgetown Road in the back of the grandstands along turn 4 to turn 1. It's now a great avenue to come down. We had 130,000 people through gate 9, and that experience now is amazing. I think there were 235 restrooms. Well, think about putting in 775 hand dryers. We got down to that specific. We painted all the restrooms, new LED lights, fixtures, etc., because we wanted you to walk into a first-class facility. With $100 million they did spend, they did a lot on the facility from a stand perspective, but some of the things, the amenities that you and I would talk about in today's modern world, we were behind. Then I talked about what can people see here. And when you looked at the front straightaway and you looked at basically people sitting under that whole grandstand, you really couldn't see other than the pits what came down the straightaway. So we put in LED boards on every pylon structure from turn 4 down to turn 1. We put an LED screen on which shows the running order, what's on the TV, And then, of course, put our big screen in the back of the pagoda, which is over 100 feet long. And that's turned out to be a great watering hole, will be for everybody when we get a full fan base there. And I could go on and on and on. But then, of course, came to the race, no fans. So at that point, it's a whole other story.
It is, but what's interesting, and I want to back up and talk about the Speedway. We had the privilege of working with then President Joey Chitwood in planning the centennial era, the initial planning back in 2006, 2007, 8. And I believe you were part of the presentation of that. And I realized, then that we're living history when we worked with the Indianapolis Motor Speedway. It's a 111-year-old facility that defines American racing to the world and racing maybe to the world. It holds a greater responsibility than just holding races. It's the holiest of ground, if you will, in the racing world. And when you look at this facility as a place, as a destination, I do have to ask you, is there any other opportunity you see? You always see opportunity in things beyond it just being a place where races are held.
Well, I think when you look at the 1,000 acres that we have, plus what we have across the street, the entire area there, which is IRL, the IndyCar is using, for their office and IMSP. We first wanted to get the main racing facility up to a level that you and I would call first class.
Right.
We're focusing on the golf course right now. We think there's a tremendous amount of interest with that. And then you look at the development, and we talk about what we want to run there. What I've tried to tell our people is, look, let's make this a special place. If you get your car on the Indianapolis Motor Speedway, it's special. And we've got some great groups, manufacturers now that want to come in, use it for driver training, for customer entertainment, showing off new vehicles. And we think those are going to be the things which are off racing schedule, but we'll utilize the racetrack that will make a big difference from us from a business perspective. And we will build fan base that way also. Gives us revenue. But again, as you see this next year, the major racing is going to be on the road course, and we're going to save the Indianapolis 500 will be the only event which will be on the oval, because I think there's some history there that we want to continue to try to hold for the future.
Well, thank you, Roger, for answering that. And I personally believe that, just from a positioning and strategic view, that's the right thing to do. I've never could completely reconcile having two races on the oval or multiple races on that oval. The Indianapolis 500 is so special. It certainly is to our audience at RACER. It's the #1 driver of traffic. And IndyCar racing is the fastest growing segment of traffic growth on RACER.com. It's been explosive this year. And which brings me to the IndyCar series. The series had terrific momentum. I think our team is, before you acquired the series, we were very impressed with what Mark Miles and Jay Fry had done with the series. And now collaborating with you, we see great potential. What is the vision for the IndyCar series going forward?
Well, number one, we've got to get date equity and go back to cities and locations, where we've been before, so people can plan their vacation, plan their event every year. And I think that we've looked hard at, where do we go, and the balance of street courses, permanent road courses, ovals. And I think that's one of the things that we were excited about as we brought Nashville in. This is a city that's on a growth pattern. It's a high activity there. And we really said initially, I said, do we really need to go to Nashville? But I said, let's bring the people who are interested. They came to Indy, put on a presentation, which really blew me away, really. The people, the commitment, the private sector. So then we went down to Nashville, got with the Titans president. So this is going to be a collaboration with Music City, but also with the Titans. So we have a really solid promoter base there that know how to deal with people. People have fun. Now we bring our product in there, and I think we can be a home run. And then, of course, as you look at ovals, we need to grow on the ovals. And I think that's one of the reasons this year, if you look at the schedule, we're running, twice at Texas prior to the Indy 500. You go back early days, the two of us, you could not race at the Indianapolis Motor Speedway unless you run at Trenton and run at Phoenix.
Right.
We can't have a guy coming in with a big check and want to jump in a car and just go run at Indy. We don't want that. And I said that to the guys at the Indy Light Series. I said, we can't have people that never run on an oval come there the night before, the day before the Indy 500 and test around that track at 200 miles an hour. So we need that oval experience. And I think when we look at Laguna Seca, we look at some of the tracks, we get into Canada, and some of the great promoters that we have, St. Louis, the Savard Green Group, and what we do in Detroit. And then we have kind of what I call a safety net, because we can use the speedway and we can run there. The teams are there, so we have that as an opportunity. So the goal this year is 17 races. We will race the Indy 500 on the date that we have, whether it be 25% of fans, 50 or 100. We're hoping it's 100 by that time. This vaccine will make a big difference on what we can do. Big outdoor facility we have, social distancing what's required. We were ready, and I think at this particular time, we want to run the series. I've never seen the interest from the standpoint of teams and people wanting to be involved now with Honda and Chevrolet, committing for a number of period. It's amazing, for a number of years that they've given us from the standpoint of where we're going, vis-a-vis the engine side, which is important for the series.
Yes, and I think the third engine manufacturer, the fourth engine manufacturer is, something we'd all like to see. Is there any development or any progress there?
Well, I can tell you, I'm talking to multiple manufacturers, and you don't announce these things until they're done. But there is definite interest. We're talking to Ferrari, we're talking to 2 other manufacturers at the same time. Hopefully, we can bring 1 or 2 of these home here over the next 12 months, because we're really talking. When you think about it, now you're talking 23. The early time, we were a little too tight, I think, on the timing with COVID and people not being able to do their regular business in order to push early to get that third manufacturer. But based on our negotiations with Chevrolet and Honda, they understand the timing. They're for it. They're trying to support, and will support any manufacturer coming in. But I think that's priority 1. Long-term deal with Firestone. We've got NTT, we've got a great series sponsor. I mean, they're very active with us. And then you take your other sponsors across the series, and then guess what? Look at the number of teams. Look at the teams that have come in. And to me, that shows you that the sport is reasonable from a cost perspective. The markets we're getting into makes sense. You're the guy in the promotion business. When you look at the West Coast, you look at the Midwest, you look at Indy, you look at Florida, and you look at places that we're able to go to. And I think those are things that are going to be important. And we're going to keep a U.S. series at this point. Let's call it Canada and the U.S. Maybe we go to Mexico at some point, but I don't see us traveling overseas at this point. We've got enough ground that we can cover with racing here in the U.S.
Yes, I'm glad to hear that as well. I think we've both seen this movie before, and I think there's a real demand for the content. And as we move past the COVID period here into a re-energized economy, we see great opportunity for motorsport. It's interesting, and I wanted to get your take on this, that compared to other sports, racing has taken less of a hit in terms of audience loss. And what we've seen online with racer.com is the audience has soared. I mean, we had 1 month that was up 100% over the prior year. Wow. And we had the Indianapolis 500 in August. We were concerned that we wouldn't match what was a record in 2019 in the month of May. We beat it by a wide margin in August. Which I find astonishing, which tells me this fan base is energized. And when I look at this, one of the big opportunities we see is being more inclusive in bringing fans in, more diverse ethnic and cultural backgrounds, and certainly the female audience, which is, as you know, drives purchase consideration in the automotive business. What is happening with your initiative in that area?
Well, we're racing for equality and change is one of the things that we announced. You are well aware of that. I think I was just blown away when I got to the track and found out that this next gen racer really go-kart program had been going for almost 10 years. And Coach Rod Reed, if you're familiar with it, actually brings diverse African-American young kids in from the city around Indianapolis, and they put over 1,000 young people through this. This has been for 11 years. And when people were looking for change and what we could do ourselves that would be tangible, we got to do tangible. A lot of people talk, there's a lot of money thrown around, but we said, what can we do? So we put our shoulder behind Rod Reed, this certainly NXG, this next gen racer, then this race for equality. We're looking at every single piece that we do business with. Can we do, is there a minority partner? Is there a minority contractor? What can we do from the people on the race teams? And I think what I'd like to do this year is be able to take the top maybe 8 or 10 of these young kids that are in next gen and let them be on one of the race teams during the month of May. Let them actually, these are 12, 13-year-old kids. They might be wiping wheels, picking up paper, whatever, but we're going to try to engage, and I think that's key. We got other announcements coming out here shortly on things that we want to do in order to take that, because I'd like to see an African-American, sit in the field, the Indianapolis 500 over the next few years. Obviously, we'd like to see more women connected at the track. And we've had some, with Danica, you just talk about people over the years, Jan and all the folks that have run there in the past. And I think those are things that we have to continue to look at from the standpoint of where we're going to go on a long-term basis. We got to be inclusive. We got to be smart. We got to do it as one team. And it's not just a one-time hit. It's got to be something that's long-serving.
Well, that's fantastic to hear that. We at RACER believe that the sport is for everyone. We also believe very strongly that the greatest opportunity is in inclusion, and this is a sport where women compete directly with men without it. There's no but this is a women's class or a men's class. A woman can beat you in a race car, and I think that's such an energizing part of the storyline. So I'm very glad to hear you say that. That's been one of the big drivers and interest in the Indy 500. And I think we share your disappointment that there wasn't a woman in the Indy 500 in 2020.
Well, we've got to work on that. And, one of the things, I'll step back here a minute, that when I sat down with Coach Reed and we talked about next gen and racing for equality, he said, Roger, a lot of these kids would drive by the Speedway. I thought they weren't allowed in. That almost makes you cry to think about that. Think about that. Here's these kids in Indianapolis, because, had people standing out in yellow jackets, you follow me? And it was earth-shattering for me. And I said, well, that's not the case. So we've got a building for them. We've got the equipment they're going to need. We got their new go-karts. Honda's helping us, with engines. And we want to take that potentially from there to Detroit, where we can use our area we have at Belle Isle. That'll be a second step. So this just isn't just a one-stop. So this is real. And certainly when you think about Jimmy McMillan, who is one of our legal staff, is our Chief Diversity Officer, we've put him in to take that role on and grow it within the community. And I think there's absolutely a commitment for us on a going forward basis.
Well, that's terrific. And our team at RACER stands ready to support your team at Penske Entertainment in any way we can to get these messages out, because they're central to our reason for being. They're on our agenda as things we believe in as well. I wanted to ask you about something I think that's energizing for the entire sport of auto racing, which is your friend and competitor Chip Ganassi is bringing Jimmy Johnson, 7-time NASCAR Cup champion, to IndyCar racing in 2020. What do you think about that?
Well, I think it's a home run. I mean, I think that I've talked with Jimmy, his interests and thoughts about racing, being a great friend of Rick Mears and following that out on the West Coast for many years with his dad. And, the ultimate racing champion in any sport I've seen in racing, that quality guy, we couldn't have a better ambassador. And you think his fan base will be coming over to that team and certainly to IndyCar, and then teaming up with Kanan, from the Ovals. That's going to be a very solid situation, and we're excited. And then of course we've got McLaughlin coming also. Yeah. Obviously not with the reputation that Jimmy has here in the U.S., but the same kind of a reputation in Australia, winning that championship down there the last 3 years in a row. So again, new teams, new drivers, new combinations, and we need change, but we also need to keep the costs in line, and that's what Jay Fry, every single day, Mark Miles and Doug, we sit down and we talk about, let's keep these costs, date equity, safety. Let's have racing on the racetrack and not racing to see who can spend the most money. And I think with these kind of stars coming in and our ability to be able to put on these races with the teams we have and sponsors and promoters we have, I think we have the right sauce. Now what we got to do is make a product that people want. And certainly your involvement with RACER and helping us in many different ways. And I've been very interested in looking at the data that you send out, you know, from your readership and the people online that you get. It's interesting. And I think IndyCar is in the right spot. We get jumped on, I think, on the train at the right time. Hopefully we brought some, you know, sense of urgency and some sense of stability to the sport too.
I think you have, Roger, and I think the thing that, you know, we look at this data, you know, very closely, and what's interesting is that we had a relatively slow growth for Racer.com, and we have obviously you're aware of our partnership with USA Today, where we moved on to their platform, which helped our visibility. But what was really the moment that things really started to accelerate was when the car began to evolve into something that's, I think, more appealing and attractive to the audience. People discount the car in the equation, but with the new body kits at the beginning, I think of was it 2018, if I remember correctly, that was when our traffic started to really move, and the embrace even of the aero screen. We were a little worried about that. You know, you don't know how the audience is going to react. They've reacted very positively to the aero screen, and we got to see this past weekend in that you know, frightening accident in Formula One, the value of having crash structure above the driver and in front of the driver. And IndyCar, I think, is leading the way with safety. And I look at what you're doing now with the series and focusing on trying to get back onto ovals. Is there any big challenge you see that IndyCar has in front of it going into 2021? Something that you want to, you know, aside from cost, what are the big opportunities going forward into the next year? This, I like to refer to it as the restart of a lifetime. What do you think?
I think number one, we need to be sure the Indianapolis 500 is solid from the standpoint of financially, and also being able to deliver a product, you know, for the guests and the fans and the generations that come there. Because, you know, without Indy, we really don't have IndyCar. Without IndyCar, we don't have Indy. So, you know, right. This is a real partnership. So I would say the crown jewel has got to be shining, number one. At the same time, the deliverance of our media partner, NBC, at this point, yes. And future, where does this take us with all the different opportunities we have? We've got to I've taken IMSP, which is our production operation, and I said, look, I want you to be the finest engine inside of IndyCar. Not worrying about Mika auctions, not worrying about a lot of these other things. So you need to be fast, you need to be reliable. So we want them to be state of the art. So we want to bring a better product to the fan base. Now, if we got Indy, and we got IndyCar with the proper teams, with Jimmy Johnson and Scott McLaughlin and guys like, you know, Dixon, who's been an outstanding, and I wouldn't even mention our guys, but again, having Elio come back and run, and you'll probably have some of these other people come back. You're starting to see this, so we need the proper show. I think when you think about qualifying these last races, you know, 1 through 22 within 9/10 of a second. I mean, you just blink. I mean, Newgarden said, I blink and I'm 5th or 6th rather than being 1st. And this is the competition. Now, on top of that, we've got to have data equity. We've got to go to places that want to invest. And we need to lead that, being able to show them and help them, because any assets that we have sitting on the ground from the time we run Indy and not are available to our track promoters. We want them to know that. We've got a great marketing team, you know, there that they put together at IndyCar, and I think that's going to be a big help for us, because what we're trying to do is take and have one organization, Paul, that we're working on marketing for the sport, because both sides, whether it's IndyCar or it's Indianapolis Motor Speedway, we're together. So we need to be sure it's a broad-based and it's focused. So I think the marketing challenge is there. I think we've got good people on it.
Yeah, you do.
We've made made some changes. And I think when you look at facilities, we've done that, but the teams are there. Then you talk about costs. We're not going to drive the costs out of sight here. We're not going to do it. And I think NASCAR's taken a big step as they go forward 23, 24 and beyond. We're already there. So we need to fine tune, but the one thing that's supposed to be paramount, and that's safety. So every time we have a conversation, we want to talk about what's this doing for safety. That's why we got to run people on ovals before they come to the Indy 500. You just can't have a big checkbook and come. And we're going to continue that as part of our passion as we go forward.
Well, that's very commendable, and the actions of IndyCar speak louder than anything. And I again commend everyone in the team who developed the aero screen and who have evolved the car to what it is now. I also have to say that I was privileged last December to see a preview of what the ad campaign was going to be this year for IndyCar that S.J. Ludke and her team had produced, and it was very, very good. It's a shame in my mind that the world didn't get to see this because of in full bloom because of the pandemic. But you have a great story to tell that's as authentic as any story in racing. And, you've written a lot of that history with your teams. And I want to talk about that for a little bit because you personally changed the face of IndyCar racing, and I was witness to it as a young person coming into the sport. There's a pre-Penske era, and then there's a post-Penske era, and how people went racing. You were competitive to the last race in every championship your teams were in this year. You won 3 of those championships and came really close to winning the other 2. You won the Virgin Supercar Championships with Scott. Austin Cindric won the Infinity Championship in NASCAR, and of course, you have a championship now in IMSA for the 2nd year in a row. What is the secret of having that level of performance in those diverse racing categories?
It's pretty simple. It's about the people. It's about the commitment. We have very low turnover in the organization. We bring people in, and they work themselves up through the organization. And I think the leadership from Tim Cindric, obviously, Kyle Moore and Ron Rosicki, and what we have over with Mike Nelson, and certainly Travis Geisler on the NASCAR side. Jonathan Duguid and that whole group, John Buslong, just the whole group of them in IMSA. Then down in Australia, what a team we had down there. That we had great leadership, but it's about the consistency. And we're one organization, and nobody is too big that can't do the lowest thing necessary on the track. And the other thing that's been positive for us, we've delivered for our sponsors. Think about this year. I think we won 39 races and around 40 or 50 poles for the year. And that means something to our sponsors because it's not all the sticker on the race car. It's the quality of the drivers and what do they do off the track. How do they represent a brand? And we need to think about that every single day. That's why we've invested in tracks, in sponsorships in these different series. And I think you see that, Chip's doing it. A lot of other people have. Hendricks has done that well. Gibbs does that. All of us are there's a lot of space out there. And we're all kind of finding our own niche. And I've been able to take the racing world as you've taken your interest in it, and you build a business. So the leverage that we can have with our customers, knowing that we're competitors, we're transparent, we got high integrity, and we want to win. That's been I think, the secret. But it's all down to that group of people that puts their hat on. Think about working separate shifts in NASCAR and having a season. We've had two cars in the Final Four and right down to the wire in the other series. But look, great season. You know what? We all started all square again, coming up in the new year. So I'm going to count on the same people. And the good news is a lot of interest with our sponsors too, even with COVID, a lot of interest. That's why we've got to have this schedule of 14 to 17 races, 17 this year, and we're going to have them. And we went a long way at IndyCar to support that financially because we needed the teams to be viable. And they felt that 12 to 14 races, that's why we ran these double headers. We've also learned how to take cost out. Jay Fry and the team there, Bill Pappas and Tino and that whole group, Derek on the engine side, they've really done a good job. And Kyle certainly Novak is the leader there from the, as the chief steward, I guess you call him, with the red hat on, sitting up there with the guy. Done a great job. Very little issues. The races went well, and the safety. And I say to you, and I say to Jay Fry and that whole team, that aero screen made a huge difference. I mean, it's night and day. The cars look terrific. It almost look like fighter planes, on the racetrack is what we want.
They sure do, and I think it's interesting to see this past year, the year before, we've seen an influx of military-related sponsors around the Indy 500, which is so appropriate. I grew up in a military family, and I'm deeply moved every year when taps are played, because it's real and it means something to me, and it also reinforces what an American event this is. And we're inclusive as a country, but there's a spirit about IndyCar racing that touches to the military and touches to our history as a nation. I often like to refer to it as a core sample of the 20th century, or the machine age of humanity. And when you look at the Indianapolis 500, and you look at IndyCar, the series, and you look at IMS Productions, do you see an opportunity to take the energy of that and further infuse that into Penske Corp and to your other businesses, and vice versa? Take all the learnings and energy of your already well spooled up businesses and bring learnings into the sphere of the racing businesses that you've just acquired.
Well, let's just step back. Racing has been a common thread, through our businesses for 50 years.
Yeah.
Think about it. My first, I went to Indy with Mark Donahue, and I was a Chevy dealer in Philadelphia. Happened to sell a Corvette to a head of marketing at Sun Oil Company. First sponsorship, $250. So you can see
it's come a long way.
That was, back in the late '60s. But it's been a common thread, and it continues to be, because attracts a lot of interest. People want to work for the company. Not just because we're in racing or want to be a driver, but we've used that to grow our brand. And you think about today with 321,000 trucks in the U.S. we're running, think about that brand has been built, through the racing and the consistency. And I think we continue. And everything we do, we look at how can we lever, our results and our performance on the racetrack, but also you tell our people we don't wait. In racing, you can't wait till the next day to fix something. When we think about our customer and that customer experience, it's got to be now, not later.
Yeah, that's great to hear that, and I agree. We have a saying at RACER: the customer owns us. What we do for them. We never forget it, and I know that's how your business is run. I think that we have a lot of people watching us today that are in the racing business. I know your passion runs deep for racing, people in racing. Many of them are your friends, and you're a shining example of what can be done out of a racing mindset and a racing background. I wanted to talk for a little bit, if you don't mind, about any advice you have for the whole community of racing as we get ready. We're on I think the first pace lap before we go green in the restart of a lifetime here into 2021. What can you share? What are your thoughts for the businesses and people watching today?
Well, I think that I can't predict 2021, neither can you, but we can plan. I think you're going to have different plans. We've got to plan 25, 50, 75, 100% fans at the Indianapolis Motor Speedway. How can we continue to support our teams? Something that we have to do is in the position we're in. But as an entrepreneur or as a individual, racing is deep. There's a lot of emotion. And I think what you've got to be sure is you take care of your people, the ones that are working for you on your race team, and also take care of this fan. I think, with your reach with RACER.com and other organizations has been key, because we look at the Indy 500 and look at how much we were down on the race date, having it in August, versus the Kentucky Derby, the Masters, and even these other big series. We were in good shape. It's because we stayed connected, whether it was e-racing. We've got to be able to pivot, and we're not sure how we've got to pivot for next year, but we're going to plan for that. And I think those are the things. I would plan a number of different scenarios. We just can't overnight react, because if you run your business by anticipation, what are we going to do 5 laps from now? What are we going to do with our fuel economy? We want 2 tires, we want 4 tires. It's pretty simple in racing business, but that's the same way I think about in our business today as we run them. So I think it's about planning. I think it's about being sure you got your arms around your people as we go forward. I'm not sure what to predict, but I can certainly plan.
Well, that's a great insight, Roger. I think we had dinner a few years back, sat with each other at the SCCA National Convention, and we're both longtime SCCA members and love the club. And you were being honored, being brought into the Hall of Fame at that time. And I asked you, what keeps you motivated about this still? And I think your answer was, it's so dynamic. It's something you can carry into the rest of your life. When you were sitting on top of the pit box calling a race, you're not doing that anymore. You're calling the ultimate race, which is the entire operation. I have to ask you, what is the greatest opportunity you see out of this chaotic year? You always see opportunity. What is the greatest opportunity? What is the most important thing you and your team have learned out of the pandemic and out of the disruption to business?
Well, I think we've learned how to run leaner from the standpoint, I think as we look at the series, and just for the moment, do we need all these practice days? Do we need all these test days? I think from a cost perspective, you're seeing that in other sports. There's no question that the e-racing has been interesting. I'm not sure it's going to take over what we're doing. Hope not. But overall, what's coming in my mind, and we think about the future, is how we can attract this younger fan base. And I think demographics are important, this race for equality. And those are the things that we have to take very seriously as we go forward. And we just can't talk about them. We have to do things. And I think one of the things that, from my perspective, when I look at what are we going to do, and what are my goals this year, is to try to deliver a consistent product. But that's going to have to be dynamic, isn't it?
Yeah.
It can't be, you're not going to write it down, it's going to happen. So we're going to have to be able to pivot and be dynamic in these different areas. But I think the cleaner and the better that we can connect with a customer, meaning this fan base, and this customer we don't have, is going to be important. And what are the different modes of media that we're now going to be interested in? And where's our fan going? How does he want to connect? Does he want to do it all through RACER.com? Does he want it through NBC Gold, or what does he want to do? And we're going to have to figure that out. And SJ has done a great job, for us in the marketing side. And, as we look at the marketing, even at the IndyCar side, trying to bring these together. So for me, as I look at, my challenge, and, interesting, you said not sitting on the pit box, pretty difficult for me to go to an IndyCar race now and kind of walk around and have to realize I'm in a neutral zone here. And it's tough. And I guess that's one of the things I got to figure out, in 21, because I want to be active, and I kind of feel when I pull in the track, I'm kind of disarmed. And what I can do is just support our people if we have any issues. So I've got to learn myself how I can bring more to the party, hopefully, to make it better. And maybe that's working, with the promoters, working with the strategy people like yourselves as we go forward.
Well, that's an interesting segue here, because I think, you've talked about a couple of things that I want to use in our closing moments here today. You talked about esports a little bit, and I'll share back some. We saw a huge spike in. I was stunned that people were watching these events as if they were live IndyCar events, and live IMSA events, and live SRO America events, and live Trans Am events on our website, and the traffic was terrific. At that moment, we saw a change in the composition of the age group for RACER.com. That's when we started to grow over 100% in 18 to 24. That can be on in the off season for every racing championship in the world, and that can be on 365 days, 24/7 if you want it to be. We also see the audience doesn't go away between races and between seasons. They're engaged anyhow. The mentality in the past has been, let's have the race weekend, get them all to show up. I see that IndyCar is moving this direction now. They're realizing you're on 24/7, 365. You're a content company. You own a production company. Is there a plan to produce content, perhaps like the Netflix series that was done for Formula One? Is there a plan to formally introduce a more structured off-season IndyCar championship and esports?
Well, let me say this: in Netflix, we've looked at that Formula One, the terrific, amazing. I mean, just quality, and can we do something like that? We're talking about, can we have a show, on a weekly basis, that keeps us connected week to week, that's relevant, to our fans. You've seen it in other sports, whether it's football or baseball or even NASCAR. We need to look. Those are things we can do with a production company. And I think you can oversaturate too. And look, some of the drivers are not interested in esports. Follow me? Some of them, are not interested. And I think we got to be careful. We're not mandating. In order to be able to be here, you got to be do esports or vice versa. But that fan, which is great with your numbers, if we can bring that fan when racing is real, meaning it's real time, and we can convert that fan to a race fan that comes to the track or watches it on TV, we've made a big step. But this will get this new generation of young people or interested people that want to do other things. COVID, quite honestly, because people have been at home, has opened up some of these doors where what can I look at that's different? Now, what's going to happen? And I didn't mention the other question you asked me. The biggest thing we can do is get a vaccine, you follow me, that's going to open up everything, not just auto racing, but bring society back to normal. That's going to be key. But I think that as you look at what we can do with esports, we've been involved in it, our team has, we're going to look at it. There's no question. The Netflix situation, I think potentially having a weekly show that we could have, that would give us that connection, week to week, day to day, with our series could be powerful. And we're not sure at this point whether we're going to do that, because quite honestly, until we get through the first January, February, what's the lockdown going to be?
Yeah.
If you give that answer, again, that's why you can't predict. And so we're going to have to be, very dynamic, and that's going to be things that we can be dynamic with. And if we can fill in with some of these other products, I think it'll be terrific and only make the sport stronger.
Well, I agree with you, and I think that we're all I think seeing light at the end of the tunnel with the very promising announcements about the vaccines that are being developed by multiple companies, and it's reassuring that that we have these people that are that dedicated. They're in a race like racing people are. They're trying to get something done as fast and effectively as they can. And then the implementation of this and bringing people back to live sporting events is something I know you've already done dry runs and rehearsals on. You were ready to do it. And when you operate the largest stadium in the world, is there any advice you could give to the promoters anywhere in racing that have similar challenges to you? What's the number one thing you'd like them to think about as we welcome our fans and our participants back to the sport as we exit the pandemic?
I think it's all about fan experience. People expect more communication while they're at the track, making them feel more they're part of the racing. We got to get them closer, to the action. And I think that's one of the things that we're trying to do. And IndyCar, quite honestly, has been open as a kid, even in sports cars. As we started with SCCA, you were there, you could see the guy. I remember Briggs Cunningham. I stood by his pits for I don't know how long, and I finally got a job polishing wheels. I mean, that's how close we got to bring this sport to people, because once you have that club in your hand, you want to continue to play. And I think that's what we have to do, and not make it too expensive. And it's just not all about the suite holders. It's about that grassroots racer, that person might want to become engaged on a short time or a long period. So I think it's the fan amenities, it's the communication. We're at the track. Think about the radios, the extra screens we put up so they can see what's going on. I want to know what's going on in turn 4. I don't want to wait till they come by in turn 1. Those are things that we're going to have to invest our money in better production, And that's why I talk about IMSB. More cameras, you know, tighter closeness to the fans themselves with the cars, talking with the drivers, more interplay with the drivers when they're on the racetrack under the yellow. We can do a lot of that we're not doing today. Some of the slow motion things that we see in supercars, you've seen some of that
Yeah,
stuff, but there's some dynamic stuff that we've got to learn how to do in IndyCar to make our sport better.
but I know you're a competitive person like none other, and you'll do those things. We're getting to the close here, and I want to ask one last question. You know, the first day and the first moment, you know, and I can relate to this because my father introduced me to racing and to the Indy 500. He loved it. And what was, you know, when you think about the younger you walking into that speedway, that first day, that first time you laid eyes on it, and the moment in your life you're living now, what would you tell the younger you about the dreams you held that day? You know, what would you tell that person that dreams of going to Indy and dreams of racing there, or dreams of running a team there, or dreams of working in the sport?
Well, I think that, you know, it's amazing. We all follow our parents, don't we? I mean, I wouldn't have maybe been interested in racing if my dad didn't take me to the 500 back in 1951. So, you know, you want to be a gymnast, you want to be a swimmer, you want to be a ball player and I see my daughter taking her kids to play hockey. You know, I think it's this family. This all becomes is a family affair. I need a sponsor. I go down to the guy at the gas station, get $50 in order to go racing. This is a grassroots, you know, starting now in go-karts. These kids, look, Lewis Hamilton, 7 or 8 championships, and McLaren looked at him when he was, you know, obviously, you know, back as a, you know, as a kid on go-karts. I think it's connecting at a young age and deciding is it what you want. Look at Cindric's kid. He hung around racing with his dad,
Yeah.
and his mom picked him up really well. Tim was building our race team. His mom really took him, and his brother helped, and they went to the tracks, and it was a family affair. And I think a lot of racers, you go back, I don't think there's any racer today that somewhere along the line it wasn't a family affair. And I think you need to be close, and you got to want to do it, but you got to be committed. And you can't buy the top. You earn the top like Jimmy Johnson has and many of these great stars. So I think it's a passion inside here. I think it's a family affair. And then it's, can you get people around you that have confidence in you, but you got to deliver and you got to be a hard worker. There's no easy way in racing.
No, there isn't. And I remember being very inspired. I was a young guy in a garage area with a fake pit pass, watching you sweep the floor while your team worked. And I watched Mark Donahue with you. I think you were polishing wheels. You were helping your team. And there was not an idle moment. And it was a great lesson to me at a young life that teamwork and teammates matter. You've got some great teammates at Penske Entertainment. And I've got to say, it was some of the best news I've been privileged to share on our platforms, that you acquired this business to take it forward into into its future. And I want to thank you sincerely for all you've done for the sport in the time you've been involved, in every level you've been involved. You have set a sterling example for everybody here watching today. And I wish you and your team the best in the year ahead. Roger, thank you for joining us.
Paul, let me say this, that I've been fortunate. As I said, my dad took me to Indy to kind of inject me with racing back in '51. I think I'm still working as hard as I can to be a winner, and that's in all sports. But it's, again, when I think back about the January announcement at the Speedway, it was a big game changer for me, a big pivot. And to have Mark Miles and have that team with Doug and John Lewis and Allison and just Cindy. I could go on and on and on. I mean, everybody, Tony that drives the truck out there in the garage area, and just, this is a team. These people love the place, and that's what you have to do. You got to have the passion, and fortunately, I've had that opportunity, but it's been a common thread through our business, and people like you have been bitten by the same bug, and I think we got to maintain the integrity. We got to stay in our channel too, and I think it's one of the things you'll see our team this year. we're really getting out of a lot of these extra things with the IMSA series going in one direction, moving McLaughlin up. We got to focus, on our race team, and we've got to have a big focus to make IndyCar and also certainly IMS the leader, continue to be the greatest spectacle in racing. So that's my that's my plan for 2021.
Well, we support that plan from our end, Roger, and we'll do everything we can to support your team. And I really am grateful for you spending the time with our audience today. I know you share your affection for all the people that work in the sport that I have. And I wish you the best. And I know you probably have a busy day ahead of you too. I don't think you ever sleep, do you?
No, it's going to be exciting, but I look forward to this. I was invited, I appreciate that. But let's stay together. Let's get this vaccine, to everyone. And this whole project, listening to the airlines, are now going to help us execute this. There's a lot of planning that's taken place, and let's not be afraid to use it. I'm sure that there's been a lot of changes in these. The great thing, you said it earlier, that we have a number of pharmaceutical companies around the world that are going to work together as one team to make it happen. So hopefully that's going to give us all a great break next year.
Yes, indeed. And thank you. And I think racing is the perfect example. I'm so proud of everyone in racing for bringing the sport forward ahead of almost every other sport, because we're used to dealing with mortal risk. We're used to dealing with danger. And all of the team members, all of the sanctioning body people, every professional person that went into the world during this pandemic to participate in these races, I salute all of you and your team in particular, Roger, at Penske Entertainment. Thank you. And I can't emphasize enough what it meant to everyone on our team that you opened this week. I think it sets a great tone and example for what follows.
Well, have a great week and successful, and we'll see you at the track.
Okay, thank you very much, Roger.
There are two types of people, racers and everyone else. RACER magazine is for those who believe that racing is a way of life. RACER embodies the excellence that defines a sport driven by passion, courage, and ingenuity. Get 1 year of both RACER's print and digital edition for only $39 with instant access to our entire digital issue archive. Subscribe now at info.racer.com.
Registering on EPARTRADE is easy. Fill out your name, email, phone number, and create a secure password. Next, select your business type. Choose supplier if you're looking to display products or services and connect with buyers. Choose racing business if you're looking to find new parts and connect with suppliers. Choose race team if you own or are a member of a professional racing team. Begin typing your company name. We most likely already have your company in our database, which you can select from the drop-down. Then, enter your job title. Choose Claim Company if you'll be editing your company profile. Other members of your company can choose Join Company if they'd like to use EPARTRADE as well. You can view and agree to our terms of use here. If you'd like to receive our weekly newsletter, choose Accept. Click Register Now, and your registration will be submitted for approval. You'll need to confirm your email once it goes through. To keep our platform industry only, you'll be approved shortly after. If we require additional proof of business, we'll reach out. Welcome to EPARTRADE.